Gold, silver, and the miners were absolutely crushed on Friday. Did they just make the long-awaited peak? I think so. This is your Friday weekly market recap. It's October 17, 2025. Let's get to our market overview. So starting off here and looking at the various markets with a focus on gold and silver and the miners, we can see the nasty red candles, especially here in the miners. Look at GDX, look at GDXJ. Boy, these are ugly. I hate it when this happens. You feel so good they're going up like this. Then you get a gap down, a nasty sell-off. And again, much worse in the miners. We can see here, here's SILJ, much worse in the miners than the metals. There's gold, there's silver, although in silver, that is a nasty bearish engulfing candle. Gold, not quite a bearish engulfing, but it's close. So this is a continuation of the miners underperforming the metals. That's always a negative sign, especially when you're coming off of a really, really strong move in the sector for many months. And this will be more pronounced on the weekly charts. But first, let's get to the daily charts of gold and silver. We can see here's a daily chart of gold. Here's the 200-day moving average here. Silver, 200-day moving average. I've sketched in potential support areas that we can focus on. Again, the presumption is that we have hit a peak in this market. I know I've said it before, but now there's even stronger evidence. And you look at these candles and you'll see it on the weekly charts of the miners. This was nasty right here. But starting with gold, let's look at where the support levels are. So we had this big breakout through 3,400. And now looking at the daily price action, the clear significant support for me is going to be here, 3,600, 3,700. Because since that point, we've seen kind of a vertical move. There's been very little selling, a little selling here, little selling here. Then you get the big selling here. This peak at 4,400. So by the way, a 15% decline would come down here, I think right to about 3,700. So this is an area that I'm looking at. Remember, in my interview with Vince Lancy, we stated that, or he stated rather, that 3,500 is a floor for the market. So looking at the technical support for gold and silver, this is the level I'm looking at, 3,600 to 3,700. You probably will see initial support here in this area, just right around 4,000, maybe a little bit below. So you could decline to that point. Maybe you bounce a little bit, and then eventually you trickle back down here to this area of strong support around 3,700. And let's look at the 200-day moving average, which, again, presuming this is a peak here, I think the 200-day moving average will finally get tested at some point here in the winter. I've sketched in here where the 200-day could end up. At the end of the year, we're looking at 3,600. So, again, if this is the peak, you could see the 200-day moving average trend higher steadily and intersect with the market somewhere around here. Now, that's going to be an exceptional buying opportunity if that transpires. Now, with respect to silver, nasty bearish engulfing here, traded up to 54. So this is another weekly close above 50, this one more convincingly, but we have not seen a monthly close yet above 50 in silver. We'll see if it can end the month above monthly resistance. But circling back to the here and now, here's the gap in silver, right here, right around 40 bucks. So you do have strong support here below the gap. I'd say call it 39. And then you have strong support here above the gap, call it 40 and a half or 41. You had a pullback here for a couple of days, then silver has really launched. So we're looking here, this is around 42. You also have support there. Initial support for silver, probably right here, I would guess. Could put a line here. I'd probably say 48-ish. But again, if it loses 48, that will trickle back down here to the mid-40s. 200-day, I didn't sketch in where this could go, but I'm thinking something like that. So we'll see. Now, gold-silver ratio, is this a mini double bottom here? You did get a nice move in the ratio up to 85 at one point today, but closed at 81 to 83. The point about the gold-silver ratio to keep in mind, secular bull markets in gold and silver, and I've said this in some interviews, they end when the gold-silver ratio gets to around 15. So what does this tell you? Yes, the market could be making a peak, but we're nowhere near any significant peak. So please keep that in mind. Okay, moving on to the weekly. And we can see how overbought here gold and silver are. They've been up, I think, for the last 9 weeks. Here's gold. You see the gap here right around 3,400. I mentioned 3,600, 3,700. That's my support level. The weekly candles in gold and silver are actually not that bad. This is the weekly candle here. This is the weekly candle for silver. Now, the weekly candle for gold before today, Friday, was up 8% on the week. It still finished up over 5% on the week. Yes, quite close at the high of the week. So not a terrible candle in gold, not a bad candle. Silver, this is a bearish candle. I believe this is a bearish shooting star in silver, bearish shooting star candle. But again, it was actually higher on the week. But nevertheless, the balance of the probabilities still favors that we put in a peak here for gold and silver for the time being. And here is more evidence that argues we've made a peak. Okay, so this is the call volume minus the put volume in the gold ETF GLD and one of the silver ETFs SLV. And we can see, look what happened. This is from Subu Trade on Twitter, by the way, subutrade.com. Great follow, great charts right here. Let's go and look in the past. So we can see here, this is what happened now with a huge spike in call volume minus put volume. This was the spike in 2011 when gold peaked right there. You can see here, oh, we have this spike in 2020. That was the COVID peak. So there was another spike. This was in April, the April peak, but the market consolidated bullishly and then exploded higher in the last couple months. And here is the mark right here. And we see the same thing in the dollar value of call volume minus put volume in SLV. Look at the levels that stand out. Here's a spike here, coincides with the 2011 spike. Spike here coincides with the COVID crash recovery and peak. And here's another spike here. What do we think is going to happen? Now, I will say for gold and silver right now, I am looking for intermediate term peaks. These huge spikes, that doesn't mean we're making a peak like this or a peak like this and the metals are going to be dead for several years, okay? Look, you had this peak or you had this spike in GLD, and what happened? Gold went sideways for 4.5 months and then exploded higher. The point being, this is not a major peak in gold and silver, but it probably is an intermediate term peak, and we can't take that lightly. Now, before we get to the stocks, thank you so much to all of you who've subscribed to the Daily Gold Premium. Thank you for your support of this channel and also my business. We focus on investing in the best junior companies that have the most upside. So we're looking for company quality, the quality of their assets, while at the same time, companies that have 3x to 5x potential over the next couple of years, and in a real blow off in the sector can do 10x potential as well. So lots of great info for you. If you own stocks, you're looking for help with stock picking and company selection and analysis, you won't be disappointed. So head on over to thedailygold.com/premium. We'd love to have you join us. And those of you who have, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. Now, moving on, let's talk about the stocks. And let's start with the silver stocks, because I mentioned last week, before this week, we had these two bearish candles in SIL here and SILJ. Oh, these are especially bearish in SILJ. 3 weeks ago, or I should say 2 weeks ago, here and here, these were bearish hanging man candles in the silver stocks. Well, what happened last week? We had bearish shooting stars. A shooting star is when you are in a long uptrend here, but then you form what looks to be a bullish hammer. So this is a reversal candle where the body here is higher. Usually if it's down around here after a downtrend, it's bullish. But you have an uptrend like this, and then you see this kind of a candle, that's telling you the market's getting tired. So that's bearish. Now you have that, a shooting star, but then you also have a hanging man, and that's when the body is down here, closer to the bottom. This thing here, the body of the candle, it's closer to the bottom, but you have a long tail that goes up like that. Look, same thing here. It's more pronounced this week, but 2 weeks ago, you can see the same thing. So you have that last week, and then what happened this week? Even though the silver stocks were up, the bodies were higher, but this is a nasty bearish candle, people. This is a shooting star, a strong shooting star. And if we look at SILJ, you'll remember from past videos, the measured upside move from this breakout here in all this action was about 27. Look where we peaked, traded up to 27. Okay. Same thing with SIL. We said 74, 75. Last week, we almost hit 75 in SIL. This week, we clearly hit it. So it appears to me, after 3 weeks of bearish candles, we are making a significant top in the silver stocks. And lastly, let's look at the gold stocks here. And I mentioned it last week. You had bearish candles. You have the same thing here again. These are bearish shooting stars. Doesn't matter if you look at GDX, GOEX, GDXJ here. What are these candles? These are bearish shooting stars. So that's where we are for the miners. That's why I believe today was a peak. And I expect or anticipate that we are going to see lower prices over the days and weeks ahead. But you know what? That's a good thing. For a lot of you who've come into the sector in the last couple of months, maybe you have a lot of cash, maybe you're hesitant to buy, you waited on the sideline, is probably going to be rewarded over the coming weeks and the next couple of months. That's all for this video. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Would love to hear from you. Hope you had a great week and hope you have an even better weekend. I'll talk to you guys again in the next video update. Thank you.